So as someone that has studied this a lot, thought about this a lot, experienced this a lot, when you go into new places and see kind of what white culture has tried to create as a DEI concept in schools, where have they gone wrong?
Woo! Where have they gone right? To the left, to the left. So white people try to do, and this may sound self-explanatory, but white people do everything white. And that's only that's how we got here.
Right.
So that's not gonna be how we get out. I had one head of school say to me one time, "Oh, last year we formulated a curriculum committee because we recognized that our curriculum was not diverse enough." And I was like, "Oh, so what happened?" And he was like, it actually like wasn't that effective. Like we didn't really like learn anything from it. And I was like, "Oh, were there any people of color on the committee?" And they was like, "No." And I'm like, "So y'all had a bunch of white people try to say what was wrong with the white curriculum?" And so I was like, "Huh. Well, that doesn't seem to make a lot of sense." And so there has to be a diversity of perspective because like, I'm going to go back to the fish thing. I bet a fish who's swimming think he doing it all. You know what I'm saying? Like, the only thing he knows is possible is to swim. So when somebody says, "Hey, go to the fish store," what he gonna do? Swim. When somebody say, "Go to the fish mall," what he gonna do? Swim. And when he come back, "You know what I did today? I really swam onto that mall." And think of somebody who can run and be like, or somebody who can drive. Why do you drive a car? Be like, "Car? We underwater. What you talking about?
Right.
Car."
Yeah.
And so I just think like, I don't know if I can answer that question discreetly. I just think the lens is wrong. I want to try to think of something that is specific. Like I think about access to schools where you have to pay tuition. And so somebody might say, "Oh, well, since our school is driven by tuition, we can't let people in who can't pay tuition." My response to that is, if your school is driven by tuition and you need people who can't pay, then get your school driven by something else. And it's like that meme where the guy go, "Oh, this going off. Oh, how did you think of that?" Like, "Oh, we could change how we do the school. Oh," and it's like, yeah. And so I just think the lens and the perspective, like white people got to ask somebody who don't look like them. They got to ask somebody who doesn't have the experience they have to learn something new.
Right. When you come into schools that have done this DEI before, what is one typical misconception that they've had that still exists when you enter a school? And then what's one way that you sort of do it the right way, knowing what you know?
In terms of a misconception, this is one I would say my pet peeve that I cannot stand when people say DEI is for the kids. And when they use the kids as their motivation for doing this work, yes, and. So like, yes, the kids will benefit, and the kids did not build this racist school. You did. Like, the adults, their parents sent them here knowing what it was started for, knowing it was exclusive. You run the school, you teach at the school, knowing what it is. And like, you teach them the things that they're learning. You know, kids learn their political beliefs and all these things from the adults. DEI is not for the kids. And I feel like it becomes this like Passover for me and all the bull that I need to deal with in myself if I teach the kids. And you can't teach somebody something you didn't learn. Right. And so that's just like a big pet peeve of mine and I have to explain this over and over and over. Yes, I'm a teacher. I'm very good at teaching kids, but kids are the most teachable thing on the planet. They're the least racist thing that we have. And so like, I'm not going to focus so much on the kids. This is about y'all. I'm a consultant for adults who knows how adults should serve kids. kids.
Right.
And I think that catches people off guard because a lot of white folks want to see the end result of anti-racism, but they don't want to change anything they're doing.
Right.
They're like, oh, I want to pass this along to the next generation. Well, guess who's paying the bills right now? Guess who's making the votes right now?
Right.
Guess who's supporting the political candidates right now?
Yeah.
You. So you need to learn, and then they can in turn learn from you. So like that's another piece of my foundation of the way that I do this work that's different is like the reason I start with the top first is because you have like your leaders have to be able to lead. And I'm of the philosophy that you only have to be one step ahead to lead.
Yeah.
As long as you're continuing your learning and your education. So year one, I'm going to educate the senior leadership team, give them some application projects, give them some homework so that when we start talking to teachers, they don't need me in every conversation.
Right.
And this is another thing that I've been, finding a lot of liberty in. I don't need to do this work as badly as you need to do this work.
Yeah.
I've been Black all my life. I've been fighting this fight all my life. This is y'all's problem that you need to fix in yourself and then in your institutions. We're just here to help.
Right.
We're doing our part. Like the Black community is always working on ourselves and working on each other. We just want the same thing from the white community. So what I'm not going to do is burn myself out trying to get you to be anti-racist.
Yeah.
Either you're going to manage your own change and I'm going to help you, or you're not. And it's just that simple. Yeah. And I think the same, going back to that analogy of teaching the special education, like if once my kids understood, here's the gap. I'm in the 5th grade. 3rd grade, it's about 2 years that I need to catch up. When I work with Mr. Holt, he makes me believe I can close the gap. So I'm gonna go. I'm at least gonna start. And so like that's why I only do 3 to 5 year contracts. Like there is no way to do this piecewise equity. There's no way to do this piecewise anti-racism. It's like you can't you can't just drain the ocean on the fish. Either you got to give him some lungs that work outside the water and then switch the whole thing, or it takes so much support. It takes so much data and revisiting and accountability and hard conversations. And so like when I consult, I live at your school. Yeah. I'm a part of your community. I become a part of that fabric, and I form relationships where, I text my clients. I can text the members of the leadership team. I can email them. They will call me and say, I just saw the George Floyd verdict. How are the people in your camp feeling about that? How's the Black community responding? I've got one friend who is a assistant principal. He now says white media versus Black Twitter, and I just laugh every time because he recognizes we're talking about different things when certain stuff happens in the country, and now he will text me and seek out those things. Yeah. His Twitter timeline is almost all Black, and so what I'm doing different is I am changing people's lens. I'm helping them change their lens so that they can walk further. They say, teach a man, give a man a fish or teach a man to fish. I'm teaching them to fish, because I'm not finna do all the white folks' work. Yeah, I'm going to give you the tools and I will guide you along the way. I'll be the sensei, but I'm not doing all the work. I done mine, Yeah.
So with all of this, obviously your specialty is specifically around education, but just from what we've talked about so far, like you clearly have not only a passion, but a real knowledge around things happening on a grand scale in the country with all of this stuff. So a question that I know a lot of white people at this point are asking after they've made the choice, like I want to be involved in this and making it better and anti-racism. What does that look like in my life? Like, is it just a matter of changing myself? Is it a matter of completely shifting my lifestyle? Do I only have to vote for people? Like, is it a voting matter? Like, what does this look like outside of just the educational thing in white people's lives? Like, what does this change require from them?
So the first step, the foundation, and ironically, this is the hardest, I think, the hardest part for individualistic society and people who come from individualistic cultures, you have to do the work to get your value out of your stuff. You gotta, like, you have to do the internal work. It usually means you have to go to therapy. You have to confront some really difficult lies that you've been taught, or things like, as you transition into this mindset of anti-racism, you have to stop seeing the world a certain way. And that takes a lot of personal work. And so, like, I think that's foundation number one. You have to kind of look at these tenets of individualism and say, where do these live in me? And then trace those back, like in the classroom where I am right now, or in the school that I'm working in, the position I'm in right now. How am I making decisions based on individualism instead of collectivism, or some hybrid of the two? And you have to ask yourself some hard questions. Am I one of the fish who cares that somebody else is drowning? And do my actions show that? You know, I think next is like starting to think about like microsystems. What are the smaller groups that I'm in? What are the smaller spheres of influence right outside of my family, my nuclear family? So maybe it's your work environment, it's your school environment, it's your school community. And so, like, it's almost like this snowball. As you awaken within yourself, you start to have this desire for other people to awaken. Because the more you grow as an individual and you start to see these things through different lenses, it is going to irritate you when people aren't able to see it. And I think we see that in all like aspects of change. You think about that person who finds something that they're really excited about, whether it's like a new show or this new hobby, and they're like, everyone needs to watch this. Everyone needs to know about this. And so, like, so that you don't become that annoying friend and like become super weird, you've also got to like always be thinking back and forth, like, how was I before I knew this? What steps did I have to go through? That's the same steps that other people are going to have to go through too. You can't just like expect everybody to be where you are once you get there. So when you're within the microsystem, you kind of start to see things a little bit bigger. I was just thinking about how my class is impacted, but now I'm thinking about how's my grade level impacted. I was just thinking about my family, but now I'm thinking about all four of the families in our cul-de-sac. How could we start to get together and see something different? And so then when you kind of go outside those microsystems, you get to the macro system. And the important thing about macro systems is you have to start with the question of what is the goal of the system. And so when I think about the United States, if I were to juxtapose two goals, is the goal for us to be in a country where everybody is good, like everybody has at least what they need to move forward? Or is the goal this mass stratification of social status and income and color and gender and all these things? Like, is the goal for all of us to be okay, or is the goal competition? Is the goal for us to have crazy wealthy people, crazy poor people? And so, like, when you start looking at macro systems, this is where a lot of people get overwhelmed or want to stop, because you are changing the makeup of something, or you are challenging the makeup of something, and that's a lot to do. It's a big ask, but it's a part of it. And so you have to start asking yourself, like, what is the purpose of this thing, and are we achieving it? And so, like, being a teacher, especially a special ed teacher, for special ed teachers, we are held the most accountable in terms of like legality and rules. Like, we have, if a student has an individualized education plan, an IEP, like the government checks to see if we did the stuff we said we were going to do. And if you don't, then you could possibly get reprimanded, you could get sued, like all these things that have to happen. And so one of the things that I learned in holding myself accountable is I always have to trust the data. So if I say I want little Johnny to learn how to read, and then by the end of the year he didn't, it don't matter what I wanted, I didn't do it. And so if you say, oh, America, liberty and justice for all, everybody has a chance, freedom for everybody, and then you look out there and folks ain't free, you got to own that. You have to hold yourself responsible for that, and not just go with, oh, well, I didn't mean for it to happen this way. Guess who doesn't care? Poor people. Guess who doesn't care? Black people. Guess who doesn't care? Dead people.
Yeah.
George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Philando Castile. They don't care what you meant. Did you do what you say you were going to do or not?
Yeah.
And if you didn't, then hopefully you have the moral obligation to go back and to first take responsibility for that, look inside yourself and say, what about me caused me not to get what I was working toward, and then go back and fix that or attempt.
Sure. So I just want to say thank you for talking to me today. All this has been great, and I just really appreciate the impact that you have, especially in your heart towards white people, of understanding this is a choice you have to make. And so I think something that I've been impacted with talking to you today is understanding that, like, I can only start this process and only do what I need to do to help this problem if I first recognize other people have experiences that they're telling me about that are true, and I see and believe those things.
Yeah.
That has to be the first step. So I think your message of that's going to be really, really big. And so continuing on the impact you can have, looking forward, how can people reach out to you to get to you in their schools, in their communities, and wherever they would like to hire you for?
Yeah, so actually I'm about to do this really big social media campaign for my website, Remington-Holt.com, is where people can go to book me. You can also find me on socials, Instagram and Twitter at Remington_RHC. RHC stands for Remington Holt Consulting. I've got a lot of cool stuff on the horizon. Like right now, I can only only people who have connections to schools or certain organizations that book me have access, but I really want to be able to give access to all people. So I'm working on that as well.
Thank you so much, Remington. It's been awesome talking to you, and thank you so much for watching.
All right. Thank you, Colin. Thanks. Appreciate it.